Hi guys, welcome to this next tutorial on animation. It's one of the last animation tutorials we're going to do, and it's on character dynamic animation. So this is animations where things like the feet move, but the character also moves about. So not like the static animations where they go up or down or left or right in almost the same spot, but they could be anywhere really. The first thing you need to remember is this thing is the character. This thing is a puppet that goes inside of it. But because it's got all uneven surfaces, it's really important that we use a nice straight object as our character. So if I press play, I've made it so that the character itself moves about. We can call it the character box if that makes it a little bit easier to understand. It moves around like so. Whenever I press forwards, it goes forwards, backwards, left and right. Now what I'm going to be doing later is just parenting this inside it, and it should follow it around. Now the feet need to be parented to this. So the feet are the children. So we select one first, hold shift and the body, control P, object. Let go of shift and click the other shoe so it's on its own, hold shift and select the body, control P, object. Now if I click the main body, the shoes move around with it. If I move the shoes, I can now move the feet independently. If I joined them, then obviously I wouldn't be able to do any of that. So the first thing I need to do is I need to animate them. Now I need to make sure that I've named each part of the object. So this thing up here is the body. This thing is the left shoe, and this thing is the right shoe. I need to do that before I start animating. I could put arms on it as well if I wanted to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, and because this is a dynamic animation, it is the dope sheet editor, not the timeline. Okay, brilliant. Zoom in with your mouse wheel and pull all the way to the left. We're dealing with tiny numbers, so I want to be able to see here individual frames almost. I'm going to put the flag back to 0. And what I'm going to do is for this shoe, I'm going to hover over the middle. It has to be in this grey area, not down here. Hover over the middle and press the I key, I for India. And we're not going to set the location, but we're going to set the visual location. Visual means it can be anywhere. It just visually looks as though it's moving. Visual location. Get all the keys there. Remember what I've taught you before. Let's do the last one first because it's returning. So I'm going to go to 10 and I'm going to put my mouse there. I, visual, location. If I want to come back then to 5, I can move it forwards. I, visual, location. Now I could use visual location and rotation and put a bit of a turn into the shoe, into the kick if I wanted to. It's completely up to me. I'm going to put that back to 0 and click on the other shoe. I, visual location. Go to the end. I, visual location. Go back to the middle. Move the shoe back. I, visual location. We only need one cycle, guys, because the whole thing is going to loop itself nicely. Put it back to 0 and that looks pretty cool. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to our logic editor, and we need to remember something that I've said in the last 2 tutorials. If we animate something, the programming has to be inside that object. What we can't do is inside this thing or this thing create loads of action actuators to make each object move. It doesn't work like that. So this is the left shoe. Really important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to keyboard and I'm going to say on here, on the character, I've said to go forwards, it is the up arrow. So I'm going to click on the left shoe, I'm going to call it forward, and I'm going to use the exact same up arrow. And I'm going to add an action sensor, actuator, call it forward. And this time I am going to use loop stop. So if I press forward and it hasn't done a full cycle, it will stop where it is and it will continue as soon as I press forward again. It is the left shoe action. It is our left shoe. Let's get that right. and I animated it over 10 frames. Let's test it. If I press P, the object should move, the shoe should move. If I stop it halfway through a cycle, it just carries on next time I press forward. Great stuff. Exactly the same on this one then. So to go forward, it's the same again. It's forwards. It was the up key again. It's just a different object to had the action actuator to. So loop stop, right shoe action, right shoe, 10. Great stuff. So they do that. When I let go, it just stops doing it. The problem is that when I press backwards, the shoes don't move, which is a bit of a problem. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to, for the right shoe, I'm going to add another keyboard sensor, and I'm going to call it back. And I'm going to use the down arrow, and I'm going to use another action actuator. It's the right shoe, place loop stop, right shoe. I'm going to set the start frame to 10, and I'm going to invert it so that the end frame is now 0. So that should work backwards. So let's have a look. If I press forwards, it goes forwards. If I press backwards, it goes backwards. That's pretty cool. Let's go to the other shoe then. So keyboard sensor, back. Let's use the down arrow, and let's come over to the action actuator. Loop stop. Right shoe action. Oh, sorry, we're on the left shoe. Don't get that wrong. Start frame 10. Let's see. Forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards. Awesome. So you might be thinking, well, how does it turn? Well, we don't have to do all that actually, because we've parented the shoes to this. If this turns, the shoes will turn. For example, if this turns, the shoes will turn. So if this turns and this is connected to it, then this will turn and will turn the shoes as well. And then the shoes work whenever we press forwards or backwards. So what we're going to do now is we're going to grab this thing and we're going to parent it to this. This is the parent, so we select just the body and we hold shift and select this thing. This has got yellow around it, this has got orange. Control P, object, and it's now parented. Now what we can do is grab our guy or girl, depends what type of character you're making, and sort of just stick it where it needs to be. About there. I like to leave something like the eyes sticking out so that if you click off of it, you can just sort of try and click something. I've not done that very well. There you go. You can click the eyes again and then you can sort of pull it out if you need to do any maintenance on it. So that's inside there. Let's have a look. So we'll go inside. We're not set a camera up, so we'll press P and the whole thing flies all over the place. Now that's a good thing that that's done that, because I'm able to explain why. It's flew all over the place because it is a solid object and we've just made it collide with another solid object. So very important, we must go to this and set it to be a ghost, and we've got to do that for our shoes as well. Don't set them to be invisible obviously, but what we do want to do is make this thing invisible, because if this thing's not invisible, then you won't be able to see your puppet. Brilliant. So I can walk all over the place. I can press forwards, backwards. I can start moonwalking. Do a bit of MJ. Do some spins. And we could do lots of other things as well. So I've not made this jump, but what you could do for the jump action is you could just make sort of like the feet just dip downwards, as stretching out a little bit, like the knees are extending, and that could just be whenever you press the jump button. You're not actually making the object jump, you're just moving the feet a little bit. It'll look as though it's jumping because the whole thing's going to fly into the air. I'm going to do a more advanced character tutorial, but if you just had a basic object like this, maybe put like a propeller hat on it, maybe had some arms or something, that would be sufficient in terms of character animation for a reasonable character. Just try and be creative with how you go about creating it. I'm going to give this an awesomeness of 7,301 just because of how cool this guy is, doing a bit of MJ. See you next time.